Diana Taurasi, PED suspension cloud. Diana Taurasi is the WNBA's all-time leading scorer, a three-time champ, and a name cemented in GOAT conversations. But in 2011, cracks appeared. Playing overseas in Turkey during the offseason, Taurasi tested positive for a banned stimulant. The story rocked women's basketball. For years, Taurasi had been the untouchable face of the league, marketed as fiery, fearless, and flawless. Suddenly, she wasn't flawless anymore. Fans questioned, was her dominance natural, or was there more behind the curtain? The WNBA quickly distanced itself, framing it as an overseas issue. Months later, the lab admitted a testing error, and Taurasi's name was cleared, but the damage was done. To critics, the incident exposed how vulnerable the league was to scandal, and how much it relied on protecting its stars. Taurasi came back, kept winning, and never failed another test. But for many fans, that moment broke the illusion. The GOAT had a stain, and it will always follow her. Quick pause. If you're locked in already, hit that subscribe button. We're gunning for 1,000 subs by the end of the month, and every click gets us closer. More unfiltered WNBA breakdowns, more drama, more truth the league doesn't want you to hear. Let's hit that milestone together. Now back to the list. Candace Parker, Sparks playoff chokes. Candace Parker was the chosen one. Rookie of the Year and MVP in 2008. The most hyped talent since Holdsclaw. But after that explosive start, reality hit. Year after year, the Sparks came up short in the playoffs, and Parker took the brunt of the blame. Critics called her soft, said she disappeared in big games, said she didn't have the killer instinct of Taurasi, Catchings, or Maya Moore. In 2012, she was swept in the finals by Minnesota. In 2015, she was benched in crunch time by then-coach Brian Agler, a public humiliation. Even when she finally won in 2016, haters pointed to the controversial no call in Game 5 against Minnesota as saving her legacy. Parker eventually silenced some of that noise with Chicago in 2021, but the truth is this: her early Sparks years exposed her as human. For nearly a decade, the superstar label didn't match the results. Maya Moore, dynasty exposed without her. Maya Moore was everything: championships, MVPs, highlights. She wasn't just the best, she was the face of the Minnesota Lynx dynasty. But when she stepped away in 2019 to focus on criminal justice reform, the Lynx collapsed. Instantly. No more finals runs, no more dynasty aura. And that's when the narrative shifted. Fans realized Minnesota wasn't just a stacked team. They were a stacked team held together by her. Sylvia Fowles, Lindsay Whalen, Seimone Augustus, they were stars. But without Maya, it all fell apart. Her exit exposed just how much the Lynx leaned on her ability to hit big shots, close games, and set the tone. As much as fans respect her activism, her absence exposed the fragility of the dynasty. Without Maya Moore, there was no Minnesota Lynx dynasty. Period. Brianna Stewart, system superstar? Brianna Stewart has the resume: MVPs, championships, finals MVPs. But the whispers have always been there. Is she truly generational, or just a product of stacked systems? In Seattle, she played alongside Sue Bird, Jewel Lloyd, and a well-coached roster. When she won MVP, critics argued her numbers came from being insulated by talent. Then came her move to New York, joining Jonquil Jones, Sabrina Ionescu, and Courtney Vandersloot, another super team. Fans started labeling her a system superstar, someone who always needs overwhelming talent around her to thrive. And when New York fell short in 2023, Stewart got cooked by the criticism. Where was the takeover ability? Where was the cold-blooded closer? She still racks up stats, but the idea of Stewart as the best is constantly exposed by the fact she's never truly carried a flawed roster on her back. Her greatness is real, but so are the doubts. Liz Cambage, quitting on teams. Liz Cambage should have been unstoppable. At 6'8", with skill, flair, and dominance in the paint, she was the kind of talent you build a franchise around. But her career became a trail of unfinished business. In Dallas, she put up historic numbers, even a 53-point game, but grew frustrated and demanded out. She moved on, landed in Las Vegas, and again became a force, until she wasn't. Friction with teammates and coaches boiled over. By the time she hit Los Angeles, her star was already dimming. In 2022, she quit mid-season, just walked away. Fans didn't forgive her. Cambage wasn't just exposed as unreliable, she became the face of wasted potential. The WNBA gave her multiple franchises to lead and she abandoned every one of them. Talent? Unquestionable. But leadership? Loyalty? Dependability? Exposed. Brittney Griner, Finals Flameouts. Brittney Griner's size made her a cheat code. Dunking in games, blocking shots with ease, scoring over smaller defenders, she looked untouchable. But the playoffs told a different story. In 2014, she won a title with Phoenix, but in other deep runs, she shrank. Opponents forced her outside the paint, exploited her turnovers, and exposed her lack of a reliable mid-range or face-up game. In multiple finals, she was neutralized, a shocking sight for a player billed as the most dominant post in the league. Add in foul trouble and inconsistency, and suddenly the unbeatable Griner didn't look so unbeatable. For casual fans, she stayed a star. But hardcore watchers knew the truth. Griner was dominant, until the brightest lights hit when her flaws got magnified. Cappie Pondexter. From superstar to locker room problem, Cappie Pondexter was electric in her prime. A Finals MVP in Phoenix, a scoring machine in New York, she was the definition of a go-to star. But as her career went on, the shine faded. Reports of locker room clashes surfaced. Coaches questioned her effort. Teammates clashed with her fiery personality. The brilliant scorer became a problem behind the scenes. By the late 2010s, she wasn't remembered as the player who once carried franchises. She was remembered for controversy. Pondexter's decline exposed the gap between being a pure hooper and being a franchise leader. She had the talent to stay beloved. Instead, she left fans with a messy ending that overshadowed her greatness. Angel McCoughtry. Inconsistency killed the myth. Angel McCoughtry was a bucket, explosive first step, fearless scoring, and a defensive menace. She dragged Atlanta to 3 finals appearances almost single-handedly. But when the spotlight hit, her flaws were impossible to hide. McCoughtry was inefficient, prone to forcing bad shots, piling up turnovers, and disappearing late in games. Her intensity was her greatest strength and her biggest weakness. Some nights she looked unstoppable. Others, she shot her team out of games. Atlanta fans defended her as a warrior carrying too much on her shoulders. Critics called her selfish and streaky. By the time injuries derailed her career, the narrative was cemented. Angel was great, but never consistent enough to be the superstar her talent suggested. Her inefficiency exposed her ceiling, exciting, but never the ultimate closer. Skylar Diggins-Smith, drama magnet. Skylar Diggins-Smith was marketed as the WNBA's golden guard from the start. Notre Dame star, flashy scorer, marketable face. But as the years went on, her reputation shifted from rising superstar to drama magnet. In Tulsa, she clashed with coaches. In Dallas, her relationship with the franchise soured after she called out management publicly. In Phoenix, the saga hit another level. Diggins-Smith accused her team of mistreatment during her pregnancy, skipped games, and eventually sat out entirely. Talent-wise, she was undeniable, an all-WNBA guard who could take over games. But the noise around her career started overshadowing the buckets. Fans began calling her toxic, claiming she was impossible to keep happy, that every franchise eventually burned down around her. Fair or not, the pattern followed her. Diggins-Smith's career exposed the divide between talent and chemistry, one of the best guards in the league, but never the stable cornerstone teams hoped for. Seimone Augustus, defensive liability. Seimone Augustus was poetry in motion on offense. Her mid-range jumper was automatic, her footwork flawless, and she played with an ease that few could match. On the Lynx, she became a Finals MVP and a dynasty staple. But as much as fans loved her silky scoring, opponents knew the truth. On defense, she was a liability. Quicker guards blew past her, wings overpowered her, and the Lynx often had to scheme around her shortcomings. Minnesota's stacked roster, Whalen, Moore, Brunson, Fowles, covered those gaps. But in isolation, Augustus was exposed. She gave up as much as she scored some nights. It didn't erase her brilliance, but it fueled critics who said she benefited from the dynasty around her. Augustus was a superstar, but a flawed one, hidden by a legendary system. Swin Cash, superstar by branding, not numbers. Swin Cash has rings, all-star appearances, and Hall of Fame credentials. But her critics will always say the same thing. She was more brand than baller. Cash was a leader, a winner, and an outspoken voice in the league. Yet, statistically, her numbers rarely matched the superstar label. She was a reliable forward, not a dominant scorer or unstoppable rebounder. Fans pointed out that she was always surrounded by talent. Detroit, Seattle, and Chicago stacked with stars, which allowed her to thrive as a role-playing glue piece rather than a franchise-carrying superstar. But the WNBA marketed her like she was top-tier elite. That disconnect exposed her. Cash deserved respect for her leadership and championships, but she was never the kind of talent that could carry a roster alone. To haters, she was proof that branding sometimes outpaces production. Katie Smith, mortal outside Detroit. Katie Smith was one of the most feared guards in WNBA history. Physical, relentless, and clutch. She won titles with the Detroit Shock and became part of their bad girls identity. But critics argue her superstar aura only lasted because of Detroit's muscle around her. Surrounded by Bill Laimbeer's tough coaching and a stacked roster of enforcers, Smith thrived. But once she left Detroit, she looked mortal. Her scoring dipped, her efficiency fell, and the intimidation factor disappeared without the Shock's backing. It exposed how much the Detroit system amplified her strengths and hid her weaknesses. Was she still a star? Absolutely. But the narrative shifted. Smith wasn't the lone franchise centerpiece. She was a killer in the right environment. Outside of it, she was just another good player, not the unstoppable superstar Detroit fans remembered. Tamika Catchings. Final struggles under the spotlight. Tamika Catchings is a legend. MVP, champion, Hall of Famer, defensive monster. One of the most complete players the WNBA has ever seen. But even legends have cracks, and Catchings came in the finals. For all her greatness, she struggled offensively when the stage was brightest. Across multiple finals appearances, her shooting percentages plummeted. Defenses packed the paint, dared her to shoot, and too often she obliged, bricking jumpers and forcing shots. Critics used those moments to question her status as an all-time closer. How can the face of the Fever dynasty look so shaky when it matters most? Supporters point out her intangibles, defense, rebounding, leadership, as the real reason Indiana stayed competitive. But the truth is unavoidable. Catchings' offensive game often crumbled in the spotlight. Her ring in 2012 silenced some of the noise, but her finals history exposed her as a superstar who couldn't always carry the scoring load when it counted. Becky Hammon, the player who couldn't win it all. Before she became a trailblazing coach, Becky Hammon was a bucket, an undrafted guard who carved her way into superstardom. She was beloved in New York and San Antonio. But here's the reality. Hammon never won a championship as a player. For all her clutch shots, fearless drives, and highlight moments, she never broke through as the centerpiece of a title team. Critics argue that exposed her ceiling, great as a complimentary star, not strong enough as a franchise cornerstone. In San Antonio, she had her chances. Deep playoff runs, stacked rosters. But every time, her teams came up short. The dagger dropper, the assassin, the fan favorite. Hammon's lack of rings is the shadow over her resume. It's not that she wasn't a superstar, it's that she was exposed as one who couldn't seal the deal when it mattered most. Cheryl Swoopes. Ego and decline. Cheryl Swoopes was the WNBA's first superstar, the face of the Houston Comets dynasty, and a 3-time MVP. But after the dynasty collapsed, so did her aura. Injuries slowed her down, but it was her clashes with teammates and reputation for arrogance that fueled the hate. Swoopes carried herself like royalty, and sometimes that confidence curdled into ego. Later in her career, she bounced from team to team, unable to recapture her prime dominance. Instead of riding off as a beloved legend, she left behind a trail of burned bridges and bruised reputations. Critics argue her decline exposed the truth. She was a product of the Comets' stacked system, not an invincible solo star. Swoopes was still great, but her late career unraveling left fans questioning just how much was her and how much was the dynasty around her. Deanna Nolan, Vanishing Act. Deanna Tweety Nolan was one of the most electrifying guards of her era. Finals MVP, 3-time champion with Detroit. She had speed, defense, and the ability to take over games. But in 2009, at just 29 years old, she walked away from the WNBA, just like that. No farewell tour, no transition. She disappeared overseas, where she later gained Russian citizenship and kept hooping. For fans, it was shocking. Nolan was in her prime, still dominant, and should have had years left in the league. Instead, her exit exposed something bigger. Her commitment to the WNBA wasn't as strong as fans thought. Was it money? Frustration with the league? Personal choice? Whatever the reason, her departure made her legacy complicated. She was a superstar who left before her story felt finished, and for many, that exposed how fragile the WNBA's grip on its stars really was. Lauren Jackson, dominant but fragile. Lauren Jackson was a generational talent, a 6'5" forward who could stretch the floor, defend the paint, and dominate both ends. She won MVPs and championships with the Seattle Storm. But her career tells a different story, one defined by injuries. Jackson's back, hips, and knees betrayed her time and time again. By her late 20s, she was already in and out of the lineup, and by her early 30s, her career was essentially over. Fans never questioned her talent, but her fragility exposed her legacy. Could she have been the greatest ever if she stayed healthy? Absolutely. But instead of finishing with decades of dominance, her resume feels shortened, a legend robbed of her twilight years. Jackson's injuries didn't just derail her career, they exposed the brutal reality that even the most unstoppable talent can be undone by the body. Sylvia Fowles, stuck too long in Chicago. Sylvia Fowles is arguably the best pure center the league has ever seen. Dominant rebounder, elite defender, Finals MVP in Minnesota. But for years, she was stuck in Chicago, loyal to a team that never gave her the support to win big. And that loyalty exposed her. While Taurasi and Catchings were competing for rings, Fowles spent her prime toiling on losing rosters. It wasn't until she forced a trade to Minnesota in 2015 that she finally broke through, winning multiple titles. Critics argue that Fowles wasted too much time tied to a franchise that wasn't built for success. It wasn't about her talent, it was about her choices. For a superstar of her caliber, staying in Chicago for so long exposed her as too patient, too loyal, and ultimately, someone who almost let her prime slip away. Chamique Holdsclaw, the collapse of the female MJ. Chamique Holdsclaw had everything: size, skill, scoring, and hype. Drafted number 1 in 1999, she was instantly billed as the female Michael Jordan. But that crown turned into a curse. Holdsclaw struggled with mental health, clashed with coaches, and never fully embraced the spotlight. By her late 20s, she was already stepping away from the game. Her talent was undeniable. Rookie of the Year, multiple All-Stars, career averages that stacked up with legends. But she never delivered the dynasty, never carried her team deep into the finals. For fans, that was the exposure. Holdsclaw wasn't built for the impossible weight of being the chosen one. Instead, she became the greatest what-if in league history, a superstar who couldn't carry the burden of the hype that defined her. Kelsey Plum, from bust to redemption, exposed early. Kelsey Plum entered the WNBA as the all-time leading scorer in NCAA history, the number 1 pick in 2017. Expectations were sky high, then reality hit. Her rookie year was underwhelming, her efficiency terrible, and critics pounced. She was labeled a bust almost immediately. For years, the narrative stuck. Too small, not athletic enough, more hype than substance. It wasn't until she reinvented herself with Las Vegas that she turned it around, becoming an all-star and champion. But those early years left scars. Plum's struggles exposed the brutal gap between college stardom and WNBA reality. Even with her redemption arc, the bust label hangs around, a reminder of how quickly fans turned on her. She's proof that in the WNBA, hype means nothing if you can't back it up, and she learned that the hard way.